Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the Salescast Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we are on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
Hey there, it's Larry, and I'm thrilled to share something incredibly close to my heart. My latest book, Selling in a Post-Trust World, is now available. In today's landscape where trust is harder to come by than ever, I've poured my years of experience into these pages to guide you through connecting genuinely and building lasting relationships with your customers. This book is more than just strategies. It's about transforming the way you sell by being authentic, real, and trustworthy in every interaction. It's for those who believe that integrity and sales can go hand in hand, and for anyone looking to not just meet their quotas, but to truly make a difference in their customers' lives. If you're ready to elevate your sales game and navigate the complexities of selling in a world where skepticism is the norm, Selling in a Post-Trust World is your must-read guide. And here's the best part. Even though it won't hit the bookstores until this summer, you can get your hands on an advanced reader's copy right now. Just head over to sellinginapostrustworld.com or click the link in the show notes, and let's embark on this journey together towards more meaningful, trust-based selling.
Hello, and welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
Hey, great seeing you. All kinds of phenomenal things happening here in the Selling from the Heart world. I can't wait to have one of my favorite guests back on the podcast, Mr. Dave Kurlan. We're in for a treat. He's
in the green room. He's raring to go. This is going to be a great conversation. It's always great to hang out with Dave. It's great to hang out with you as well. Thank you for listening to the podcast and this growing community of sales professionals all over the world across multiple industries that are saying, hey, I'm dedicated to being genuine, being authentic, and building trust. That's what it means to sell from the heart. And Larry, it's so exciting. The book on trust is here, and you can get your hands on an advanced reader's edition of Selling in a Post-Trust World. It's so fun to finally get this book out into all of our friends' hands.
Absolutely. This was a long overdue book, my opinion. It took me a while to put this together. This book packs a punch around how to build trust in a world that's absolutely starving for it. And let me tell you, every page is full of nuggets, Darrell.
You may be asking, how can I get my hands on this book? Well, guess what? You can get an advanced reader's copy. We have a limited number of those. The book officially releases in August, but right now you can get your hands on an advanced reader's copy. And rumor is Larry Levine will actually autograph this thing for you. So how do you get one? Well, it's really easy. You go to www.sellinginapostrustworld.com. The title of the book is the title of the website, sellinginapostrustworld.com. Grab your copy. Larry will autograph an advanced reader's edition. This is like a limited edition. It's going to be incredible. I'm so excited to get this in the hands of all of our listeners. And this topic of trust is so critical right now.
Absolutely. But I just got to make it funny. I'm just going to slam myself, Darrell, but everyone who watches or listens to this know I do. Hey, by the way, if you get a signed copy of the book, I'm here to tell you, man, hang on to it, because that book's going to be worth about 1 penny more later on. My signature is priceless, let me tell you.
Hey, you never know, Larry. You never know the value of this someday. Literally though. So thankful that we've been able to get our hands on this book early. Sellinginapostrustworld.com. Can't wait for your feedback. Speaking of trust, today we're honored to host our friend Dave Kurlan. He's the founder of Objective Management Group and also CEO of Kurlan and Associates. His leadership at Kurlan and Associates has positioned the firm among the elite in sales consulting and training, recognized on the Inc. 5000 list as one of Selling Power's top 20 sales training companies. Beyond founding OMG, known for its superior Salesforce evaluation tools, Dave has significantly impacted the sales world with his best-selling book, Baseline Selling. as well through his prolific writing on and his award-winning blog, Understanding the Sales Force, which always has very punchy and interesting articles. You'll want to follow that in the show link, that link in the show notes. But with a career dedicated to elevating sales performance, Dave's insights are invaluable to anyone looking to advance in sales. Let's explore the strategies and philosophies behind his success. Dave, welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. And one thing's changed since you had me on the show last year. You have such a kick-ass professional intro now. That intro music and the graphics, not to take anything away from the two of you and your exquisite choice in guests, but I mean, that intro is kick-ass.
Oh, you know what? We're aimed to impress, but I got to tell everyone, if you're, we're going to have some laughs. If you haven't been following Dave Kurlan, you got to follow this guy. I love what he brings to the table, and I like it because he's a smart aleck just like me. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Larry. Darrell, it's great to be here.
Well, as we get started, Dave, you know the question that every guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast answers, because you've answered it before. And that question is, what does it mean to you to sell from the heart?
Well, at the risk of being repetitive, actually, I won't be repetitive. Whatever I answered last time, that stands, but we'll do a different answer this time. It's interesting. It's coincidental, but probably very much on purpose. That a little while back, I wrote an article on the 11 most powerful lessons from watching The Chosen, which is the story of Jesus and his 12 apostles. And while in hindsight, I know there should have been 12 lessons, but I wasn't smart enough to get 12 out of the series. 11. If you just take those 11, that's what it means to sell from the heart. It's basically to do what Jesus would do. You know, it's what you guys talk about all the time. It's being authentic, but it's also being humble and showing your humility. And it's about being patient with prospects and going at their speed and not making them go at your speed. And it's about listening and asking questions. And it's about lowering resistance and being non-threatening and selling from love, you know, helping people solve their problems instead of trying to sell something because I made a sale and made some money. It's all of those things and more. Other than that, I have no idea.
and you know what? And it was good because I love when Dave puts these articles out because he always tags me in. So I was honored to actually write something, response in it. But what's really cool about what you just brought up, and I'm a massive believer in this, is the saying that what's forever old is forever new. If this goes all the way back in time, now let's just fast forward to the present. Here we are in 2024. All of those things that you just mentioned, Dave, are alive and well. They were alive and well in biblical times. They're alive and well today. And
they certainly are.
And they're more important now than they've ever been.
That's right. And I think it's so easy to get away from those teachings, those philosophies, those feelings, even the basis of Jesus came to earth to grant us salvation. If you just look at that to save us, and I don't want to turn this into a faith-based interview for you guys, and I don't want to talk about faith, but if you think about why he was here, to spread his love and to let everybody know they were loved. If you just do that kind of work, then you can not only sell from the heart, but the second book that you have coming out about trust, all the trust issues go away. If you're being that humble and that authentic and you're listening and you're patient, why would anybody not trust you? I wrote a white paper on trust probably 10 years ago, and I was horrified over the results of the polling that I did as the basis for the article. And it was basically whether or not people trusted salespeople. And if they didn't, why? And if they did, why? And then I broke it down by industry and by gender And back then there were only two genders. So I don't know if that would still be valid today, but women, and you probably know this because you wrote a whole book on it.
Sure.
I just wrote a 6-page white paper, but women were far less trusting of salespeople than men because women had been ripped off far more often than men. They had been taken advantage of far more often than men. And the most trusted salespeople were those in industrial sales. And the least trusted salespeople, you can probably guess, but car salespeople.
Yeah, sure.
Why do you think the industrial salespeople are the most trusted? And I think that's really interesting. We have a lot of industrial salespeople, manufacturing people that listen to this podcast in the network. What is it about that? That is a really curious data point to me. What is it about industrial salespeople that you think engenders more trust?
This is purely speculation on my part.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I think most of the industrial salespeople are selling to industrial buyers who have a problem, and the salespeople selling industrial supplies and equipment and components and parts tend to be subject matter experts. They know their shit, and they're able to quickly provide the right solution for the person who needs that solution and do it repeatedly over time. So they build trust over time by being responsible and credible and consistent and helpful.
So I'm going to poke the bear on this one just for a second. But can't what you just said be true of other sales channels that are out there? So, I mean, for the case in point of our conversation point, it's industrial sales, but the same could be said for other sales professionals in other sales channels. They carry themselves the same way.
Well, it's a great question, and I would speculate again. I don't have data, but I would speculate that there are even automobile salespeople who are trusted. My grandfather was an automobile salesperson. Interesting story, if you don't mind me telling it. He sold cars back when, in order to sell a car, you must first teach someone how to drive one.
Oh, wow. Hey, they should do that more often these days.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Editorial comment.
He also purchased an Edsel dealership for central Massachusetts. Edsel Ford was Henry Ford's grandson, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Such a story.
A descendant of Henry Ford somewhere in the family tree, the Edsel, which most people have never heard of. And it wouldn't be a surprise to learn that it was utter failure. So my grandfather lost everything over his investment in an Edsel franchise. Wow. But fast forward a couple of decades, and I was young in the sales training business. It was in the late 80s. And I had a guy in my training who didn't agree with what I was asking him to do. Didn't agree that you should ask a bunch of questions. He had a huge need to be liked. And he thought that asking 7 more questions than he was prepared to ask would piss off his customer, who incidentally was an industrial buyer. And he was an industrial salesperson. And he came up to me after the training. And he said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure. What's on your mind?" He said, "Your grandfather would roll over in his grave if he heard what you were teaching." I said, "You knew my grandfather?" He said, "He sold everybody in my family a car. We loved Abe. He was the best. He was so trustworthy." And that's why I speculated that there are some car salespeople that people trust. He was awesome. He would be horrified to hear what you're doing. I said, "Help me. What exactly is it that I'm doing that would so horrify him?" He said, this constant pushing to ask another question. I said, "And what's wrong with that?" He said, "Well, people might get upset. I said, why do you think they might get upset? He said, well, some people don't want to be asked a lot of questions. I said, why do you think that is?
Oh,
I asked him like 14 questions, and he was so emotional about his problem. He never even saw the questions coming. And I finally said, I honestly don't remember his name, even though I remember the story. So, and I'm not going to call him Larry or Darrell. So let's call him Bob. So I said, Bob, when did you first notice that I just asked you 14 and this makes 15 questions? He said, no. I said, yeah, I just asked you 15 questions and you didn't even notice. You were the one who said that people would get upset if you asked too many questions. You said it wouldn't work. You said it couldn't be done. I just asked you 15 questions and you didn't have a single problem with it. He said, there must be some kind of trick. I said, no trick. But you were emotional because we were talking about your problem. You had the problem when we role played it and it was pretend. He said, my apologies to your grandfather. He didn't apologize to me, but he apologized to my grandfather.
Hey, you know what I love about that story, and me being a high clarity guy, I have to ask, and Darrell's been privy to this, I got to ask a lot of questions. And to me, this goes back, this brings, I'm glad we're talking about this because I want to dig a little bit deeper into this, this goes
Need a
back.
longer shovel.
No, it's all good, right? We can have the long virtual shovel on this one. Is when you don't bring clarity to the forefront, when you don't ask a lot of questions and you just keep things at a surface level, you really can't get to the root issue of what's really going on. And I think this is where a lot of salespeople miss the mark. It just happens to be ingrained in my DNA, right? I push the brakes on things if I'm not crystal clear on it. And I think that's what more salespeople need to, I'm not saying be like me, but they have to be high clarity people and ask a lot of questions to get to the root cause of it. And when you do this, you're actually going to build trust along the way. And when you do this, you get the real answer to the real problem.
Exactly. And if you don't mind me going back to that article on The Chosen one last time, there was a scene late in season 3 where two factions came together and they didn't like each other. And then they came across Jesus and none of them liked Jesus for what he represented. So there's now 3 factions and all of a sudden the apostles show up. And so nobody likes anybody. And Jesus said, can we just sit down and talk? And they asked, why do you want to talk? He says, well, the only way we're going to resolve this is by talking. And we listen and ask questions and argue if we have to until we reach resolution. So some of the people sat and some of the people didn't. And he started asking questions and listening and talking. And then a fella comes along on crutches and there's an incredible stench coming from this fella because he had broken his leg and his leg had gotten infected. Everyone could smell the infection. And Jesus wasn't really getting anywhere with these two groups and coming to a resolution. So he decided proof of concept. And I think salespeople need to sell with proof of concept a lot more than they do, maybe incorporating some ROI. So how does Jesus do proof of concept? He performs a healing. And within a couple of minutes, the guy throws his crutches away, rips off all his bandages. He stops smelling. He gives Jesus a big hug. Jesus has this big grin on his face of satisfaction and accomplishment. And then he turns back to all the warring factions and they all sit down and now they're ready to listen. So sometimes it just takes a concept.
I love it. Got to do a demo. That was a flashback to my first sales job. You don't come back to the office until you've done at least one demonstration today. And I think a lot of this is really, really powerful around this concept of building trust, and love the way this conversation is going, because Larry's, your point about clarity, Dave's observation and instruction around ask questions, and then demonstrate that what we're talking about actually, could work. It's a proof of concept. Provide some proof behind all of this. These are the block and tackle things of trust that I think it's so easy as salespeople to try and shortcut around it. Like, I already know the answer. I already know, but I think one of the things that's been helpful to me over the years as in sales is to remember that when I walk in, almost like to think about a blank whiteboard, like everything's erased. We're starting from scratch. And I think one of the reasons salespeople struggle to build trust is they walk in with a lot of assumptions, and they walk in with, just thinking the ball is way, way further down the field. To use a football analogy or to use a baseball analogy, because I understand I'm sitting here with two rabid baseball fans. You've got to move around the bases, and it's always sequential. So along this line, as you're thinking about trust in this article you wrote 10 years ago, and you're reflecting on it here today, and I read that article, what are some other things that you think are on point here in 2024 in the environment that we're in right now when it comes to building trust or obstacles to trust in today's selling environment?
I think one of the things that hasn't changed, but it's more important than ever as the economic climate becomes a little bit more difficult for doing business. And it certainly helps to build trust, but salespeople have a reluctance. This is variations on a theme. Salespeople have a reluctance to slowly and patiently listen and ask questions. They prefer to start with a demo or a presentation. And they don't get that the very fact that they want to pitch something and sell something and promote something and talk about the bells and the whistles and the features and the benefits creates distrust. People don't like getting sold. They want to be able to buy. And if you're listening and asking questions, you're creating a scenario that allows them to want to buy something from you. Because they like you and they trust you and you appear to be a subject matter expert and you're credible and they feel good about you and you're building a relationship and you're differentiating yourself from everybody else while all that's going on. But if you're pushing a product or you're pushing a service, that raises their resistance. And it is impossible to trust when your resistance is high.
So I want to, again, man, I got to stick up for salespeople on this just for a second.
Go ahead.
And where do I go with this? But okay, I'm just going to say it. We got to look beyond salespeople. I totally get what you're saying. I buy into it 100%. But we got to look at, as we start moving up the corporate ladder, where do you think it's coming from? And so for a moment, I'm a big believer in this. Salespeople, a lot of them out there are products of the environments they were raised in. Most of these people sometimes don't know any better because that's just what's been driven to them through leadership or through management or through L&D or some kind of training manager and things like that. So I want you to speak to this some more. So setting salespeople aside, speak to the sales leaders and the executives on the importance of what you just said and slowing this down and asking better questions that will actually speed up the results. It doesn't do what they think it's going to do, which is slow things down. Huh?
What are sales leaders? They're salespeople who happen to be better at presenting and pushing and promoting and selling than the other salespeople. And what are the folks in the C-suite, people who don't know enough about selling to know that selling is something other than pushing and promoting and demoing and presenting and pitching products and services. So there's a lot of the blind leading the blind still after all these years, and all of the experts like you and some of the others who have honorable intentions and are trying to help salespeople elevate the profession, and even working with sales managers and sales leaders and the C-suite to try to help them understand what professional selling requires in order to have consistency and excellence and success, and give the CEO the ultimate of what that person is looking for, which is a forecast that comes true. It's the blind leading the blind. Excuse me.
Yeah. This is such a powerful conversation around being, we've said this for years here at Selling from the Heart, and really quoting the title of our friend Kevin Davis's book, Slow Down to Sell Faster. And I think, one of the big takeaways I have as we're wrapping this conversation up is so much of our attempts to accelerate to the close, to accelerate the deal, end up really slowing the whole thing down because they erode trust. And, the opposite of trust is mistrust, which slows things down. I also think of the other title we quote all the time, Business at the Speed of Trust by Stephen M. R. Covey. And so my takeaway on this, Dave, is that the more we can slow things down and work at the pace, like you said at the very beginning of this, one of your lessons was let's have the patience and let's work at the pace of the person that we're working with, selling to, who's buying from us. Let's work at their pace, because to start to accelerate things erodes trust and really gets the exact opposite of the result that we want. And it happens every single time we try to rush things.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind me putting a little baseline selling emphasis on this, the only baseball and baseline selling is the metaphor of the baseball diamond as sales process. And maybe one other thing. The book has a lot of baseball in it, but when we're actually working with sales teams, we don't spend much time talking about baseball. But the metaphor is really important. So if you break the sales process down into the 4 most simple generic stages, as a sales cycle goes from suspect to prospect to qualified to closable. Those are the 4 bases. Suspect at first base, that's a first meeting. A prospect is a real good opportunity. Qualified opportunity is pretty close to closable, and at home plate you've scored. So to go a little further, the milestones for each stage get laid out on the base path. So first to second base, that's the generic discovery stage. That's where all the listening and the asking and the differentiating and the urgency takes place. Whereas between second and third, those are all the milestones for qualification. So if we go back to the go slower to make the sales cycle go faster, between first and second base, the slower you go in that stage of the sales process, basically walk from first to second base instead of run. If you do a good job there and you uncover compelling reasons to buy and to buy from us, and we monetize those compelling reasons and create urgency from that, with urgency, the rest of the sales process goes fast. They'll qualify themselves if they want your help. They won't resist the qualifying questions like most salespeople experience. Instead, they'll say, "What do you need from me?" And just say, "I just need to know these 5 things or these 8 things." And they'll just give you that. They're ready to move once you've reached urgency. So the better you do taking your time between first and second base, the faster you can run from second base to home plate. And what most salespeople do is they get on first base. That's where that first new meeting is. And they run right across the pitcher's mound to third base.
Right.
Third base, where they can present and talk about their capabilities and talk about their value proposition and do a presentation or a demo or a proposal or a quote. And they skip all the important stuff that needs to happen between first and second, where they're actually building a case. And between second and third, where they're actually gauging the prospect's ability to buy from them.
Love it.
Hey,
Other than that, I have nothing to add.
Oh no, you've added a lot. This is really good. Before Dave signs off, I got to lay another baseball analogy because I love this stuff. I can't. All right, you can. For those that are watching, you can see what's over me. I'm a big LA Dodgers fan, but if you do what Dave just shared,
the Red Sox West these days.
It's all good. Nevertheless, however, if you just did what Dave shared, you'll become the heavy hitter. And the heavy hitter in baseball analogy bats cleanup. And usually somebody who bats cleanup drives in a lot of runs. In baseball analogy for American baseball, that's runs batted in. So if you want to lead your sales team in runs batted in and be known as the heavy hitter, walk from first base to second base. Watch what starts to happen. Dave, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys having me back on. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, let me ask you this question because I know everyone wants to know the answer to this. Dave, how can we get more Dave Kurlan in our lives?
Just read my blog. You know what I'm thinking all the time if you read my blog.
Dave, what a pleasure. It's always fun having a conversation. You're a true champion of sales and selling from the heart. We really appreciate you sharing time with us today.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been fun. It's always great to be on your show. Hope you have me back again before I die.
On that note, Darrell.
Well, always a fun conversation. And this is, I was just, as Dave was talking in that last analogy, I was just picturing, can you imagine if it's, it's summer and you're sitting watching a baseball game and somebody gets to first base and then they decide, well, I don't want to go to second base. I'll just run across the field. Can you imagine if somebody ran across the pitcher's mound to third base? What an idiot you'd think that person would be and what the crowd would do. Yet, I mean, let's be honest. Let's have a moment of honest reflection and go, how many times have we just run right past that key part of the sales process? I love this concept of walking from first base to second base through the questioning and through the true understanding, the building the ROI. Like that right there is pure, not just baseball gold. Don't do that if you're playing baseball, by the way. You probably get thrown out a second. But in sales, that concept of really slowing down, especially during that phase of the sales process. And it's not even so much slowing down, Larry. I think it's more of being very deliberate and seeking clarity, like you talked about earlier. That was just pure fantastic. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, no, Dave. I mean, Dave shared a lot of great stuff. And I just want to, just before we wrap up, I want to go back to this clarity because it ties into slow down, sell faster. Mm-hmm. And this is a mindset thing. And this is what we'd encourage you all, after you get done watching us or listening to us, is just sit down and just ask yourself, if I brought more clarity, if I asked more questions, if I brought intentionality to the forefront, what would I soon start to uncover? I'm here to tell you this. You got to get out of your head on this one. Because you can't be saying, well, man, I'm asking this person so many questions, or you can't say, hey, Darrell, I apologize that I'm asking you so many questions. You got to cut that out.
Yeah.
Just ask questions. And I watch what starts to happen as that executive perks up in their chair and they lean in. They will answer your questions. All you got to do is ask.
And this is so critical right now because we are selling in a post-trust world. This is a world we're in. We need trust. And it is so critical, maybe more critical than ever, that we're very intentional about how we engage with our prospects and clients in a way that builds trust. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say you want to grab a copy, an advanced reader's edition.
That was a great segue, Darrell.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. We aim to smoothly segue. And that is exactly where you want to go. Sellinginapostrustworld.com. Sellinginapostrustworld.com. Get one of those limited advanced readers copies. And when you do, bonus points when you pick up a copy, put it in front of your phone, smile, and put it on social. you know you're going to get Larry Levine's attention. So thank you for everyone.
Real quick, by the way, really
quick. Thank you to everyone who's liking, listening, and most of all, leaving reviews in the podcast. It helps us spread the word about this movement of authenticity right here in the sales profession. Make sure to stay tuned. We've got a great roster of guests coming up throughout the spring and summer. You want to be tuned in on this. We're also going to have more exciting announcements. So until next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust. Slow down, especially between first and second base in that sales process. And most of all,
sell from the heart.